Ready to go live.
Is that the live dance?
That's the live dance.
Well, I can chair dance. I did
It's
chair dance pretty good.
yeah, so do I. As long as I don't have to stand up or move around
I,
or
I
ever
wouldn't
leave my
I wouldn't
house.
recommend chair dancing standing up because if you fall off the chair, it's higher than a ground level fall. That's my
I
official nurse advice.
that's the medical
Professional Indian.
establishment's stance on dancing in a chair. Don't stand in the chair while you do it
Correct.
because
But
it's
if you're going to be
dangerous.
dancing in the dark, you can stand up.
Hello, friends and family, and welcome to another Saturday morning coffee and conversation with me, Erin Mahone. And I am so excited to be joined once again by what's the word? The ineffable
Oh,
Melissa Earley. Hi, friend.
hi. How are you?
I'm awesome. I've missed you. And normally we do like a little check-in beforehand before we talk. So I actually get to like know what's going on in your life. But we didn't have we didn't have that opportunity
Not
this
it's
time.
not the it's not the C word.
Okay, well that's good. That's good.
I
No,
already
it's
been
okay.
there, done that, got the shirt.
Exactly. Me too. Yes.
Yay!
Welcome to the club. Um, so how's life?
Life is good. Um Better than it's been in quite a while. I just started a new job.
Yeah, how's it going?
Um um can you still hear me if I do that? It's like in my eye, in my mouth, you know.
I mean, I can hear you better when it's in front of
Yeah.
your face, but if you need
Uh,
to cough, then by all means, move
I'll,
it.
how about that? Nobody else is in the room. So
You're not
um
coughing your germs on people.
right. So I'm at the Hampton Newport News Community Service Board.
Yay.
Yay. Um so far everyone I've met there is fabulous and wonderful and welcoming and inclusive, and I love the atmosphere and the people and the vibe there.
Amazing.
Um yeah, it's awesome. Um the online training modules are
A challenge.
fun. Well, it's always good to review and learn new stuff as well. I think, not speaking for the entire world, just maybe half of the world kind of were online out.
Mm,
Um, and so, I've done online onboarding stuff before, and it wasn't as challenging as it is right
right.
now to focus, pay attention, sit in front
Right.
of the computer. Um, because I'm a learning sponge. Like, I love to learn stuff. I
Mm,
love to relearn stuff.
right.
It's just a bit more challenging right now, I think,
Yeah.
than it would be, or it has been in the past.
I think all of our children, after a year and a half of virtual learning and their grades going in the toilet, would echo that.
Yes, it's very hard
Mhm.
to find a quiet space.
Yeah.
Um, and I was excited about, like the first day of orientation, and I was I drove down to Hampton, and I got there, and um the trainer was there and set me up on a computer in a room by myself, and I zoomed. Excuse me.
Hi, Nona.
Go. You're
Hi,
not
Nona.
supposed to be here. I said I was in a room by myself. Bye, Nona.
Hi, Nona. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
She made a liar out of me.
It's okay. Well, you were by yourself. We clearly saw the moment where you went from being by yourself to not being by yourself.
And I
So
was obviously surprised.
it's right. Yes, it's all good.
She brought
It's
me
all good.
mints because it's going to
Nice.
go well with my French vanilla coffee.
Oh, no. That's
It
an
was very
interesting
nice of her to think of me. She
always
she does she does well of
with
about
that.
thinking of me. Yeah, that was a hard sentence to
That's a
put
lot of
together, but I
words.
I,
Yeah.
I did it. But yeah, I was in a room by myself, and on a laptop, Zooming with other people who were in the building or close by buildings
Right.
in rooms by themselves, Zooming.
Oh no.
I was like, hmm,
Yeah,
hmm.
that's a
But
lot.
and they've been very kind about let me Zoom from home or actually do the online stuff from home, and so that's been nice. But I get to like start orienting in my workplace this coming week.
Can you talk about what your job is? Like what you specifically are going to be doing?
Um, I could,
But you'd have to
however,
kill
I
me.
would
Yeah.
have to. Yeah, I'd have to. No, actually, so I originally, and this is something I actually would definitely like to put out there publicly, and it has nothing to do with anything that the CSB did wrong. They actually handled it very wonderfully. I was hired as an emergency services counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And they received a memo from one of the state agencies, and apparently there was something that was grandfathered. I want to say maybe 5 years ago, because that's typically the state's kind of grandfather period. About Because I'm a QMHP by and my entrance into that is the fact that I have a bachelor's in nursing, because
Mm-hmm.
there's several bachelor's degrees that qualify you for that
QMHP. Right.
qualified mental health
Qualified. Right.
professional thing.
Moniker. Right.
And at one time with that, you could be a pre-screener, which means you can go out into the world and encounter somebody that is having a mental health crisis, and you can screen them or pre-screen them to determine whether or not they meet the criteria for hospitalization or a lower level of like a least restrict. The goal is the least restrictive
Least restrictive
environment
environment.
that
Right.
will appropriately
Meet their needs.
thank you. Exactly. Used to live here, Um, but so and that's something that I've done before, that kind of thing, and many people that are QMHPs do that and have been doing that for some time. And apparently there was a decision made. I don't know what state agency. I maybe Department of Health Professions, maybe Department of Behavioral Health. I'm truly not sure. And there was a time period, but I'm not sure it was communicated or tracked well or something like that. And it was because they hired me, and then they called me and said we pretty much just found out about this. And I did some checking, and there's other CSBs that are kind of in the same boat. And it's like they told me, they said, it would be fair to you to bring you on, and then apparently this is going to take effect in December, that QMHPs are no longer going to be able, because it's a like a billing thing with Medicaid or something like that. And
right.
I don't know all the ins and outs. I don't want to talk too much about the whys, because I really don't want to misspeak. And they handled it wonderfully. They said, we truly want you to still come to work for us. Let's pull up the jobs that we have open and see what you qualify for. And so I'm going to be working as an RN in the crisis stabilization unit, which I'm still very excited about.
Awesome. Right.
We're still right up my alley. The people over there are wonderful. But a reason I want to talk about it, and I've actually already talked about it in a very appropriate form. One of the other hats I wear is, I'm involved in some, legislative stuff with the Virginia Nurses Association, and I was moderating a kind of a forum thing with some delegates and candidates and things a few weeks ago, and I brought it up in there. And I think one of the delegates who was reelected, and he serves on a committee that has some connection to that type of thing. And he was like, wow, that's probably not good, because it does affect the CSBs across the Commonwealth, is my understanding. So kind of it's nice to be able to be a vessel to
Right.
deliver a message to someone that can actually make, an impact on something. And it truly wasn't about me. Yes, it did affect me. However, I still was able to move into a position that I'm very happy with. But my kind of concern is, you know, there are people at my agency that are, they're going to have to, move to other positions. And then the greater question is, what about positions that they now have to fill that we already have a shortage of employees or
Right.
available qualified candidates to fill positions
Right.
without this problem? So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, it'll with talking to Delegate Willett and bring it to his attention. And there was a lobbyist that works with a lot of different agencies that kind of are in this realm. She was very attentive, and she's amazing. And so hopefully that's gonna maybe get some movement, or figure out, is this the right time right now?
Right.
Should we extend this? Should we revisit it?
Right.
Should we, make it a from now on thing versus
From
kind of
but
kicking the
right.
people out
Right.
kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there's such a need. There's so much mental health crisis happening right now.
Right.
The system in the state is in the midst of being overhauled, in terms of how do we respond to mental health crises, who is involved in that process, what is the protocol? And so, to take an already taxed system of people who are already doing this job, who,
Right. And some have been for
and have been
years.
right, then to remove that seems counterintuitive, counterproductive to trying to create a system that is both responsive and filled with qualified professionals. If a person has been doing this job effectively, then it doesn't seem to make any sense to pull the rug out from under the system that oh god, that I mean, they're just it's tough. It's hard working in community mental health right now. Not that it hasn't always been hard, but
Mhm.
it's particularly challenging at this moment.
It's the
And
age-old question of
right,
experience
right,
education. And
exactly.
there's gonna be or maybe there already is an impasse of, you know, let's bring them here and then work from this
Exactly.
foundation.
Yeah.
Because, you have somebody that has the education with no experience. Do you want that person to be making decisions on whether or not somebody's going to involuntarily lose their freedom
Right.
versus somebody that may not have the same level of education, but they have 15 years of experience?
Mhm.
And so it's like, let's even the playing field,
Yeah.
and then let the people with the education learn from the people with the experience, and figure out where we go from here versus we're going to drop the experienced people out, bring the educated people in. That doesn't make sense.
Well, you and I should have this conversation, like
A whole
another
nother.
time, right? Because, well, not because it's really, really important.
It's very relevant
It's
right now.
it's incredibly important, as a person who had the experience myself, having worked at the QMHP at the bachelor's level in numerous different environments
Uh,
for a long time, you as well, who then went back to get I went back to get my master's degree, at 40, after having been, worked in and around the field for a long time.
so you're a both
Um,
and person.
I am, and I sat in a classroom in this graduate program with, a a large number of people who were wonderful and who will make exceptionally good therapists and mental health professionals, who largely, not entirely, but mostly, had zero experience in the field. And we're going to walk out of a graduate program with just slightly more
Like going,
experience in the field than they had when they walked in. And, so education is vitally important. I believe
absolutely.
that we should have the gatekeepers and the people who are, protecting the integrity of our, professional degrees and all of those things. And we don't exist in a bubble. And we can't just put something in place and walk away from it forever and say this is the way it is and this makes sense, and have things not be flexible, because you're always going to want the person with the 15 years worth of experience doing the thing. Education is, again, vitally important, and you cannot teach the skills that you learn on the job. You can't,
Right.
they are not, it is not possible to teach them. You can model them, you can provide, uh, you know, opportunities to practice them, but you cannot teach them. And responding to a crisis is something that you cannot create in a lab.
No, you
It
can have
is.
the best like role players on the planet,
Mhm.
and the person walking in still knows it's not real.
That's right. That's right. And in order to be able to, I always liken everything to, I'm a theater kid. So, I liken everything to being on stage, right? And, even though it's very different because it's not, being on a stage is not life or death, even if it feels like it is.
Most of
But
the time.
there's a huge difference between rehearsal and, you know, once the lights go up on opening night. Like it is real. You are across from a person who is in a life or death, freedom or, not situation in those crises. And it's, you don't get a chance to, you can't simulate that. You can,
Right.
you can practice, but you can't simulate it. And so it's a very important conversation. It's just not the conversation we're here to have
It
today.
it can be
So
similar to some of the things we may talk about today,
yes,
depending on one's family
but
dynamics.
I mean, sometimes being in, home for the holidays is like being in the middle of a
In a
mental health
crisis.
crisis. You
I'm
know,
just saying.
whether it's your own or the people that you're visiting,
Exactly. Or all of the above.
everyone. So
But
yeah, no,
the whole purpose, this is a wonderful segue into
yes,
our topic,
it is.
because you have a choice whether you participate in the crisis,
That's
which
right.
is why the holidays don't have to suck.
There you go. So
That was
tell
awesome.
me, it was almost as if we wrote that. Um,
Almost.
what 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 motivated you to, because this was your idea, like you wanted to talk about this. So like what motivated you personally to want to talk about the hospital doesn't have
Hospital.
to suck. The holidays don't have to suck.
Because you don't want to end up in the hospital
Right.
after the holidays. So, um, because I remember when you said, "Hey, are you still good for this date or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's the topic?" Because I actually signed up for several,
Several. Yeah.
like towards the beginning of the year,
Hmm.
and I like the date. I chose this topic because we're heading into the holiday
Yeah.
season. I mean,
Right.
we've got, Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving. Don't want to leave out any holidays. Uh,
Right. Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. I wasn't gonna leave out Hanukkah.
I know.
Come on, I'm
I
inclusive
know.
here.
I know you
Um,
are.
Christmas, Kwanzaa,
Right. New Year's.
New Year's, Valentine's. No, I'm just kidding. We're not gonna go that far ahead. But I mean, this time of year there are lots and lots of traditions, celebrations,
Hmm.
times for people to get together, and not even thinking about that this particular year is a year that people are going to be seeing each other maybe for the first time in a couple of years,
Yeah.
which may even add a little bit of extra, hopefully joy and cheer, but maybe tension.
Mm-hmm.
Possible. But I chose it because and I'll speak from my own experience because that's the only experience
The
I've
only
lived.
experience you have, right?
Um the family stuff can be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the family that's by blood or by choice,
Mm-hmm.
by legal document, marriage or whatever, adoption, any kind of other thing. Um, and it can be complicated and you know there can be a lot of things that come up this time of year for a lot of people and there was a time when I really 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 struggled with the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of almost anything family of origin related.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've had this conversation before. I may even have talked about it here. That I was able at some point, and I don't do it perfectly, but I was able at some point to come to a place where you know I made a conscious decision about what kind of relationship that I was going to have as an adult with other people, my family, my parents. My parents are no longer living. They've both passed away. It was when my father's death was this past summer. It was very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a discussion for another a whole another podcast. Um, but I was able as an adult to decide that I could either, and I liken it to the going to a well to get water. I could either keep going to a dry well
Mm-hmm.
looking for water that wasn't there and was never going to be there,
Right.
or I could take that well and make it what I wanted it to be. I could use it as, I could plant flowers around it, weave nice, like, I'm not much of a flower person. I technically in real life couldn't do this, but in my mind's eye, I could, make this wonderful, beautiful thing out of it. But it
Mm-hmm.
would be something that I made, I created, and
Right.
that's, you know, what my metaphor is that deciding that you know my parents weren't going to be able to give me the kind of love that I kept going to them for
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't teach them
Right.
because I couldn't go to them for it and teach them at the same time. So that I decided what exactly kind of relationship did I want to have from them that would be fulfilling for me,
Mm-hmm.
and then where else could I go to get the kind of love that I had been seeking from them. So I had to find me a well with water somewhere else and build a different kind of relationship with them. And that was through a bunch of therapy, a bunch of, lots and lots of stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, look, here's the meme. It says make your well pretty and you'll be great.
Right.
It wasn't
Right.
that
No.
easy. It took
Action, like
exactly it took
pain and action.
lots of tears, lots of therapy, lots of that
Right.
kind of stuff. But once it happened, it was a beautiful thing, and it waxed and waned, and there were painful times and stuff like that. And at the same time, it was way better than the constant pain of trying to get something and always being disappointed, always being
Right.
let down, always having my heart broken. So that's kind of how I started kind of approaching the holidays, and I had a psychiatrist way back when, and I was talking to him, and I was like, well, traditions are so important, and we don't do this anymore, and we don't do this anymore, and now I'm in a committed relationship, and we have to figure out, where are we going for Thanksgiving? Where are we going for Christmas? We're da 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 da, all this other stuff. And he was like, just make new traditions.
Right.
And I was like, what?
Huh? I'm allowed to do that?
Are you serious? I
Yeah.
have that choice?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like almost like I needed permission. I needed
Yeah.
to hear that, to say, like, oh, and you're a doctor. So could you write me a script for that?
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
Melissa needs to make new traditions to be happy.
That's right.
And that was like, it was like this super freeing moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so, Nona and I sat down and talked about it, and we were like, you know what? We'll be okay if we don't have Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving Day.
Right.
The turkey won't know. Pretty sure
Yep.
the turkey won't know. It's dead.
Exactly. Exactly. It's dead.
Exactly. It's
Exactly.
like,
Well, but it's so true. And that can be hard when, I mean, in my own family, I know that I have had these situations where I, have, asserted certain, boundaries, or said, hey, and I have a good relationship with my family, and I love my family. And it was important for me to have my own traditions with my partner and our children in our homes. And so to say that, like Thanksgiving was always my favorite holiday. Not because of what it represented, but because of the the memories that I had of childhood with my grandmother preparing the meal and all of that stuff. Um, and so I wanted to have Thanksgiving at my house. And I sort of set that when my kids were very young, probably before I even had all of my children. I started having Thanksgiving at my house and building this tradition. And, my grandmother had always had it, and then she passed away. And then my dad and stepmother hosted it. And, she has a very large family, and they have their own traditions. And, you know, but it was really important for me to make this my tradition. And I think, on some level, they would like for us to be at their house on Thanksgiving and be with everyone, and, all of the people being together. And, you know, and I wasn't, I'm not trying to hurt anyone, and had invited everyone, you are welcome to come over, come for dessert once everybody leaves your house. My mother comes, my mother-in-law, comes, every year there's a different group of people together for Thanksgiving at my house. And I, I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to make anybody's, day worse. But for me, it was just a really important thing that I had to sort of like set down and say, this is what I need to be happy. This is what I want. I spent my entire childhood with divorced parents, being shuffled back and forth between numerous houses and having to leave places that I didn't want to leave to go to other places that I didn't want to go to. And it was so important to me for this holiday to be like, I want to wake up, I want to turn on the parade, I want to stay in my pajamas most of the day and cook my food and be with my people and have my home be the place where, whoever wants to come comes to me. And I want my kids to never have to, navigate all of that complexity and all of those, like, whoever can be with us, come be with us. And then tomorrow, almost inevitably, we'll have a second Thanksgiving with the people who couldn't be with us today. Right. And so, but like, I don't know if you saw that meme a few weeks ago about run the dishwasher twice.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes.
When you said like make new traditions, that was the thing that I thought of. And this is for, anybody that didn't see it. It was a story about a woman who, was struggling with depression and did not have motivation and, was really struggling to get to get the dishes done. And so they would just like throw them in the dishwasher and, they wouldn't come out clean and or they would pile up because it would get overwhelming because they couldn't wash them before. And the therapist just said, well, why don't you run the dishwasher twice or 3 times or however many times it takes to get them clean? Because who cares? There's no rules. There's not a rule that says you can't do that or you're not allowed to do that. But we think that there's a right way. We think that there's a supposed to way to manage life. And if we don't follow those rules or do things that way, then we're the broken ones, as opposed to, just adjusting the system to meet our own needs. And I just loved that so much.
Yeah, it was awesome. Nona says something that it's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective?
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
I'll take effective any day over being right.
Right. Yeah. Or the others, the other part of that, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Exactly.
Sometimes you just have to let shit go. Right. Exactly. Sometimes it's just not worth fighting about a thing that is, just going to prolong discomfort and, it's okay to set boundaries. This is Absolutely. I think that if I, the two-sided coin of if you could see me that I am finding as I continue to do this and continue to sort of, dig down to what's the core of this. It's not a two-sided coin because it's probably it's more like one of those multi-sided dice that you
like that extra one that comes with some games that nobody knows what it's for.
Well, it's like the Dungeons and Dragons one where it's got all the different sides on it. I think that's really what it is, because it's like, it's find your voice, right? And then you find your voice and then you figure out what you want to do with it. Right? Like set the boundary, give yourself the self-compassion, the love and the honoring of your own needs enough to be able to build a life that makes sense for you rather than trying to constantly cram yourself into someone else's expectations of who you are and what you should be. And that is really relevant at this time of year.
Yeah. And I've seen it a bunch of different places over however long, but like no is a complete sentence.
Yes. I had that conversation a couple of days ago in a session and they were like, but that just feels mean. And I'm like, well, it only feels mean because you've been taught that setting boundaries is mean. And there's certainly appropriate ways to present information and assert yourself. But, if somebody doesn't listen to you, then it is perfectly acceptable to just say no. And no, thank you. I won't be coming to Christmas this year. I'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
You don't owe anyone an explanation.
No.
Especially in the situations that you're describing where you continue to go to the well and it's, either dried up or poisoned.
Or there's just, you fall in. And you can't get out.
Right. Right. It gets sucks you into it.
Exactly. You lean too far in looking to see if there's something way at the bottom, and then you fall in and you can't get out and you are stuck.
Right.
And Lord knows how long you're going to be stuck there because nobody in there is going to give you a boost out because they want you in there with them.
Yep. Right. Well, that's the thing about, about the whole idea of being allowed to have boundaries and set boundaries and say, no, I'm not comfortable with this. Even if you decide you want to go and be with the family, it's okay to say, I'm going to come, but I'm only going to stay for an hour. And no, I don't want you to pinch my cheeks, Aunt Mary. Please don't kiss me on the mouth, Uncle Fred. Right? Please don't comment about my body, old whoever, like whether it's the old aunt who, tells you that either you lost weight, or you look like or you did this or you did that, or the old dude that just is gross and
Every family has that one uncle.
and so, like, it's okay in all of those settings to run the dishwasher twice. Like, what works for you? Go find your own well.
And if you have kids, to, start having conversations with them when they're really little, to help them know that they're in charge of themselves and that you're their backup.
That's right. That's right. You don't have to hug anybody you don't want to hug. You don't have to kiss anybody that you don't want to kiss. And if they get upset, that's on them, not on you.
And
their responses are their business.
Find me or your dad or whoever
100%.
is in your squad.
Exactly. No, it's incredibly, because listen, in most cases, or in many cases, I'm not going to say in most cases, in a lot of cases, I would imagine that the people who cross children's boundaries are doing so out of love and enthusiasm, right? I love you. I'm excited to see you. I want to just hug you and squeeze you because you're so cute and adorable. And there are many situations in which that is not true. And people have disgusting and nefarious, motivations for that. And regardless, it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit what your motivation is. If you're touching my kid or you're touching me and I don't want you to, I should be able to say no.
And a person who is, for the most part, healthy,
yes, will understand that. Exactly. And you won't say, oh, well, why won't you give me a kiss? Or,
are you mad at me?
What's wrong with you? Why are you treating me this way? You're being mean, or you're being rude, or you're, whatever. Your kid is supposed to come in and hug every person in the room, even if they're people they've never met before. No, they do not have to do that. And nor should they be taught that is, expected of them.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not. Especially like people they're just meeting or they haven't seen in a long time, especially if it like they were several years younger.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right.
They may not even remember them.
Right. Well, and they often don't. I have an enormous family, and people come in and out, and we go to places and we do things, and people remember meeting my children, and we're friends. Right. We're friends on Facebook. So they've seen my children grow up. They've had, what they consider to be a relationship with my children, but my children maybe have met them 2 or 3 times in their entire lives. And my children are teenagers. And so, just because you have a connection to a child doesn't mean that child has any idea who you are. And that's not mean. I'm not saying that to be like, you're inconsequential. I'm just saying that, I think it goes without saying, but sometimes, especially at this time of year when people place so much emphasis on, being together at the holidays and, and all the things that are going to happen, that, like, dear adults, you are not, the world does not revolve around you.
No, say it isn't so. You're right, though. It doesn't.
And other people are allowed to have needs, wants, desires, and boundaries. And it is not a direct reflection of how they feel about you.
That is absolutely right.
Except when it is. And then it's also acceptable.
and it's okay to communicate that. As a matter of fact, it's probably best to communicate that so that there isn't any confusion about that.
Exactly. I'm not hugging this year. We just got through a pandemic. I love you. I'm just not hugging.
I'm not
back to hugging. Right. Or elbow bump. Right. Or shoulder bump. Right. we'll do the hustle, but I'm not hugging you, right? It's just not gonna, that's not happening. And, it's not a reflection of like how I feel about you, except
And
when
I'm
it
sorry, go ahead.
is. No, please
Right.
continue.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, we're just coming out of a pandemic, or it could be, you know what? I really never have liked you.
Exactly. And,
Just
we have
saying,
to we have to share this space for 4 hours once a year, and I gotta, I gotta navigate it. But,
just, I mean, sometimes it's the truth is best.
right.
And the truth
Well,
hurts.
that's the thing though, is that, I don't know if in that instance the truth is
I
best.
said
I
that's
don't.
what I said sometimes.
Sometimes, right? I don't know if I'm gonna, in all honesty, I I don't have, there's not a lot of people in my family that I just really don't like, or feel like I just would tend not to spend time with those people in general. But, you know, I don't think that I would ever say, I just really don't, I'm not going to hug you because I just really don't like you.
You kind
Um,
of smell.
you're just, or you're a judgmental dickhead, and I don't enjoy being in your space, right? Like
No, I can't see you saying that. And there was
probably
a
not
time
going to
in
say
my
that.
life where I probably would have said things like that, but that was a really, really long time ago. I mean, at least a year and a half. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So, I mean, I would probably just, elect to either not be around that person or just say, I'm not hugging, and leave off the thing about like, I'm not hugging you because I think you're an asshole. Like, you know, it's okay to, you know,
Yeah,
I don't know.
you
I
can
feel
use your
like we can protect the humanity of one another,
right, right. It
unless
is the
this is an
holidays.
abuser. Unless this is an abuser, and I choose not to be in that environment. Like if there's a situation where there is an abusive person, or a person who has, directly harmed me or my child or someone, I will not be spending the holidays with that person.
And that is a situation that may come up, and
Yes.
then it's time to have a conversation with whoever's hosting
Right.
and say, look, I know that you have a relationship with so and so,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I have a relationship. We need to figure out how to stagger so that so and I are not there at the same time.
Right.
Because I very much want to spend time with you, and your relationship with that person is none of my business. However, I will not share space with them.
That's right.
And that is perfectly okay. And if the host doesn't know why, they don't need to know
They
why.
don't need to know why.
And if they ask, just say it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. It just is what it is. I cannot share space with them. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Right. And
go
go
ahead.
ahead. And if what?
And if they won't respect that boundary, then just say, well, if we can't work that out, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'll see
I
you tomorrow, the
yeah,
day after Thanksgiving,
right.
or we'll get
We'll have to
together in. Right.
right. If because my guess is the person that the has perpetrated the abuse knows why you don't want to share space with them,
Right.
and won't be surprised when the host says, I just need to know exactly when you're going to be here, because for whatever reason Melissa says that she's not coming at the same time.
Right.
And they're not going to be like, oh yeah, that's because of that time when I inappropriately touched her. Da da da. Yeah,
Right.
pretty sure they're not gonna spill the beans on themselves. So it just needs to be that simple, that direct, and if the host doesn't know the story, they don't need to know. It's not like you have to be like, okay, I know I never
Right.
told you this, blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't have to. It's just boom, here's the boundary, and boom.
And this can be messy, right? Like this is not a situation where you're always going to say to, Aunt Linda, I need to know when, you know, Bob, Bill, whatever is coming so that I can not share space with him because, I'm
Yeah.
just not going to do that.
You may not
Um,
be in that, you may not be there yet.
you may not. And so in this instance, I think that the big question or the big situation is, you know, run the dishwasher twice. You can run the dishwasher twice. You can find your own well. You can, what do you need to do in order to be able to find, the joy of the day or to be able to, protect your peace in the midst of all of this. And so there's not a cut and dry answer for that. There's not this is what you do in every instance to, avoid conflict, to, help everyone feel good at the end of the situation. Like that's not your job. Your job is to, be kind and
Number one.
respectful. Right. Be kind and respectful, honor and manage your relationships, be honest to the degree that you are comfortable disclosing whatever is happening, and take care of your own needs. Right? If you need to stay home on Thanksgiving and watch, very bad movies for 14 hours, just get through the day and eat ice cream and, get yourself a pumpkin pie, then by all means do that. If that is what is going to make that day, livable, survivable for you. Um, yes, go ahead.
Or make a new tradition. If
Yes.
you don't have someone to spend the holiday with, because it can be extremely painful to sit there alone, there
Mhm.
are other options. You can maybe go serve meals to the homeless if that's not your thing.
Mhm.
Um, there are lots of times when you may see on Facebook where it's, friends will throw out open invites and be like, hey, if
Right.
anybody on my friends list doesn't have somewhere to go, come on over.
Mhm.
And my go-to thing in my brain is like, they're talking to everybody on their friends list but you.
Right.
And
Right. That you are not included in this invitation.
right,
Don't even try.
when they're saying
Right.
everybody on my friends list, there's a invisible ink that says except for Melissa.
That's right.
That's not
It's
true.
not true.
You're
Exactly.
that voice in your head lies a lot.
Uh-huh.
A lot. You
Yep.
have to figure out, and it's really hard sometimes. You can't figure out the one that's the happy voice and the one that's the not so happy voice.
Right. Yep.
And do like a check the facts. It's like, well, does it make sense that they have 472 friends on their friend list and they would exclude
Only exclude
me?
me. Right.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
Right.
So, and if you're not somebody that would feel comfortable or whatever, I mean, there's other things that you can do to be included somewhere with people if
Mhm.
if being by yourself
If
is not
is
an okay
painful.
thing.
Right. And conversely, if you are a person for whom large gatherings is painful, but you feel compelled to, you know, deal with that sensory onslaught every year because you feel like you're supposed to, it's also okay to not do that. It's okay to find one person and, do whatever you want to do with that day. Like, I think that the message here is that there is a way we get socialized to think that taking care of our own needs is selfish.
It's not.
Exactly. There are ways to protect your peace, to, find joy in your life, to meet your own physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, intellectual needs, while also protecting your relationships, while also, being kind and respectful, and, but the really hard kernel here is that sometimes when we set boundaries, the people in our lives don't like it.
Yeah.
And just because they don't like it doesn't mean you're not allowed to do it.
Yeah. Because you know what? They'll get over it.
It's on them. If you're doing your due diligence, if you're being kind and respectful in your example, hey, Aunt Linda, I love you. I want to be with you. I'm excited to spend Thanksgiving with you. And I can't be there when Bob is there. So, can you just let me know when would be a safe window for me to arrive? And if Aunt Linda gets annoyed with you, that's on Aunt Linda. And if there's drama in the family, then there's drama in the family, and that's also not on you, right? If you run up screaming and yelling and telling Bob to, go F himself, and Aunt Linda's a terrible person for continuing to interact with Bob, that's a whole different set of circumstances. But if you're doing, fulfilling your role of, taking care of yourself while also honoring the, experience of other people, then, if they don't like it, they can hoof it. Somebody used to say that.
I'm sure it's a famous quote. Which
you are.
I think it's on a plaque somewhere.
It is. Don't you know that everything I say is on a plaque somewhere? It's a very large plaque with, making room for all the words.
It's in your backyard, and it's got Sharpie words on it. Can you do that on a podcast?
Well, here's the thing.
It's your podcast.
And the people who are going to hear this on the feed have no idea what I just did. They can only imagine the hand gesture that I just presented to you with the longer finger.
You're number one.
Yes, you are.
Before I forget what I was going to say, you were saying about hoofing it.
Yeah.
But if you need to be the one that needs to hoof it, that's okay too.
Exactly.
And there's a couple ways to handle that. If you're going with someone like your other half, partner, spouse, with your kids, whoever, you can have like a code word.
Yeah.
That, which my partner and my word is pickles. Don't ask me how that came to be, but for 20 some years, that's what it's been. And
we need to go get some pickles right now.
I don't know how you explain that, like in the middle of Christmas Day. Why you all
pickles? I love you, pickles.
Does this have pickles in it? And they're pointing at pumpkin pie. I'm just saying. But it just became our word, and and it works. If either one of us hears the other one say that, we have a confirmation just to make sure that we didn't mishear pickles, or there wasn't an actual need to say pickles. But yeah, and so it's very subtle. It's not like we don't like, oh, okay, all right. It's not like a fire alarm.
Right now.
It's not like a fire alarm just went off, and it's like, okay, get your coat, run. It's very subtle, and we kind of start wrapping up conversations and saying, whew, wow, gosh, I'm getting tired, blah, blah, blah. We just kind of
Right.
subtly wrap up and head out. Um, and it's just a way that we kind of make an exodus. And
Right.
it's and it's kind of a good plan ahead thing, because
Yeah.
if it's a lot easier to have that plan ahead of time
Mhm.
than to be subtle, like especially like if you're at a table eating or whatever, and you're trying to be like,
Right.
uh,
Go, no. Right.
you don't want to do that.
Oh,
I hope I didn't just trigger anyone, but
no,
I'm just saying, it's like you definitely. I mean, those would be a bit obvious
that's a
about
little much. And then your partner says, "Oh, well, it's been lovely. We have to leave now." Everyone at the table is going to know exactly what's
exactly.
happening.
They're
So,
going, "Oh, you've got to go because Melissa's going to blow her brains out if he stays any longer." you know, yeah,
Melissa actually hates you all. So, we're going to leave now.
especially if it's at their family's house.
Right? Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But
Right.
anyway, so yeah, I'm just saying, like, planning ahead, and planning ahead can also be, don't wait until like the morning of
Mhm.
to talk to whoever's home you're going to.
Right.
Um, having conversations now for Thanksgiving or
Mhm.
Hanukkah. I'm not sure the dates that Hanukkah falls this year.
Hanukkah this year is really early. It starts on November 28th.
Wow, that's like
Yes.
the Monday after,
Yeah, it's Sunday, I think.
Sunday after.
Yeah,
Wow, that is
maybe. I don't know.
really soon.
It's very early this
So
year.
yeah,
Yeah.
having those conversations
Mhm.
now,
Yeah.
because with Hanukkah, there's lots of
There's lots of
opportunities in
days.
a in a row to, you know, that kind of, yeah.
Right. Well, and I think that, when you talk about planning ahead, as we wrap up, the other plan ahead thing is like, to what degree am I, if I am physically safe in, like there in my environment, or I'm not going to have necessarily a panic attack with these people, or, but like, to what degree am I going to get involved in political conversations? To what degree am I going to allow people to say, inappropriate, sexist, racist, homophobic things, in my presence? And what are my responses to those things? And so, you know, how do I protect my peace while, sitting across from the anti-vax, QAnon conspiracy theorist in the family? And, you know, have still enjoy my holiday. And only you can answer that question for yourself, right? Only you know to what degree you can ignore somebody, to what degree you want to engage somebody, and while, I am always inclined to sort of face that conversation head on and really kind of jump into it, especially if someone's being offensive. Everyone has to protect their peace. This is like, protect your peace, protect your peace, protect your peace, right? That is my like mantra right now. And so whatever that means for you, but planning ahead, especially if there's a family member who is going to trigger you or who is going to say things that you find upsetting, what is the plan? And there are some like little tricks that you can use. By you can deflect, you can what you can ask them directly, what do you mean by that statement? What are you referring to? Or you can say, is there a specific person that you're talking about? I don't think that applies to all humans, or maybe that behavior does apply to all humans, and they're focusing their attention on one particular person. So, you know,
Mhm.
but you can also decide not to get in a screaming match with somebody, or to tell them they're an idiot, or, to fall down the well, to get sucked into the well, as Melissa said earlier, right? Like, sometimes. And so, but only you as an individual can decide what feels best and what's right for you in the moment. But definitely make a plan.
Yep. And it's okay to take a detour if the path that you're on isn't working.
Yes.
You can change the plan if the
Mhm.
plan isn't working, it doesn't fit the situation.
Right.
And I know we're hitting the time, but there's one more thing that I want to address that I think is super important. Gift giving.
Yes.
You don't have to spend money on gifts.
Yes.
And you can also plan ahead for that. If your family, friends, loved ones, or whatever are gift givers or whatever, put the word out that, you know what, this has been a hard year, whatever, or we're not doing monetary types
Right.
of gifts.
Mhm.
If you want to, engage in gift giving, write us a note, give us a card, whatever. Just put it out there. And if if it's something that they're typically going to give your kids presents, you can put a monetary limit on it, so that you don't feel obligated to,
Right.
and
Break the
things like
bank.
that.
Yep.
Exactly. And
Right.
because that can be extremely awkward and shame inducing and guilt
Mhm.
producing and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was kind of
That's right. We started with the dance and
shame
we
inducing,
ended.
guilt producing, avoided at all costs.
There you go. I know. I love it. I love it. So I think that, I'm gonna try this. So there will be a lot of things on the table this holiday season, but we're gonna ask you to take shame off the
Off the
table.
table.
Right? Oh, okay.
Ooh. Ooh.
That's so silly, so cheesy. No, like, you can choose to take shame off the table, right? You can choose
Absolutely.
to just, like, communicate your needs, and put up that barrier that says, I'm not going to fall into the shame space. Like, this person is probably going to try and go there with me, and I'm gonna just nod my head and remind myself that I'm entitled to protect my peace, and they don't get to have that power over me.
Exactly.
And that can be a really hard thing for us to give ourselves permission to do, but ultimately you have the right. And you know we don't have to play into those situations. And if it's not possible, like, if there is someone who is truly toxic, then stay the
Hoof
hell
it.
away from them.
Hoof
Hoof
it.
it. Exactly. Thank you. Stay away from them. They don't deserve you. They don't deserve to be in your
Share your
orbit.
space.
They do not. And it is okay to not allow them to do that. You are entitled to find joy and protect peace in this holiday season and every other day. And however you choose to do that is acceptable.
Yes.
With love and respect. I love you, my friend.
I love
Thank
you.
you for presenting this opportunity. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And
I plan to.
good.
I hope you do as well. You and
Thank you.
yours.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's a little different for us this year, but we're excited about it. And I love you all. I will see you soon. I don't think we have anybody on the books for next week, but that
We
might
may be
change. You
adding a
never know.
CSB.
A CSB conversation. Exactly. Exactly. All right, y'all. I love you. Have a wonderful week. And yeah, be well.
All right. Peace.
Woo!